I feel like you can't call it an NRL Magic round without magicians.
How would that translate in the hard-hitting world of rugby league?
I think they'd be good with the sleight of hand, the
Yep.
deft passes.
Maybe the dummy?
Yeah, but when it comes to putting their body on the line, I think they'd probably get really seriously injured. We need to do something about the amount of time it takes a sin bin player to exit the field. What about any player getting sin bin for the Titans? We say if you get off in the next 10 seconds...
We'll sign you up to another team.
Hello and welcome to a very special State of Origin edition of the Voluntary Tackle, the only NRL podcast advocating for the theme tune of the 1995 drama series Spellbinder to be our new national anthem. Only one season made. No need for a second. I'm your host, Eamon Brown, and today on the show we have a number of exciting interviews to regale you with, including our very first cross-podcast conversation with Pat Picante from fellow potty Sports Best Friends, a chat with the very funny and unfortunately Queensland-based comic Rob Brown, plus a very special interview with an icon of the State of Origin arena, Dale Rowdy Shearer. But first, it would be remiss of me not to update you all on the whereabouts of our good mate Chip Jones. Chip has assured me he should have managed to evade the authorities in Perth and be back in Sydney in time for our next show. So good luck with the police chase, mate, and remember, a crime spree isn't really a crime spree so long as you believe you are law-abiding. Now, we're going to kick off the show with a chat with a fellow rugby league podcaster in Pat Picante. Now, as you all know, this podcast, it leans a little bit tricolours. It topples slightly towards creative accounting. It may even embody an ever-so-small nudge towards the Cayman Islands. So inviting a dyed-in-the-wool South fan on the show took some convincing of the show's board, frankly, but after much cajoling and bribing, I present to you all a meeting of the minds, the day Sports Best Friends met the Voluntary Tackle. It was strictly plutonic. Enjoy.
Hi.
Hey, Pat Picante, Eamon Brown here. Thanks for coming on the potty.
You are very welcome. Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. Now, look, for our listeners' benefit, the Voluntary Tackle is dabbling in its very first cross-podcast interview by chatting to Sports Best Friends, delightful Pat Picante. So a very formal welcome, Pat.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be the first.
That's right. You're the guinea pig, as it were. So I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah, that's right. Now, before we get into any footy chat, I just know my gut's telling me that Big T is going to be very jealous that he wasn't invited on the show today as well. So can you just let him know that if he just tones down the Luke Brooks fandom by about 10%, we might actually consider extending an invite to him as well.
I've been trying to get him to tone it down for weeks, so I'll see what I can do. What's
your normal strategy to get him to just not talk about the Tigers so much?
Constant eye rolling. That usually is my main go-to.
That's it. That's your main weapon. I love it.
Absolutely.
See, I don't have eye rolling really in my repertoire. I don't roll my eyes well. So I've relied on sort of profanity for most of my life. So I'm not sure if that would be a better weapon or not. Probably not.
I feel like that's his weapon of choice, so I don't want to fight fire with fire. Fair
enough. Don't, yeah, exactly. Choose a more appropriate weapon. Now, in homage to Sports Best Friends, Pat, I'm actually currently drinking a beer. It's a warm can of VB I didn't quite finish off from last night.
That sounds right in line with what we normally drink.
Is that right? Well, to be honest, my impression is you tend to drink sort of quite bourgeois craft beers. Am I wrong?
Well, me specifically, me personally, no, not my choice, but I would say the P Doctor, that would be his go-to.
Is that right? So you are generally drinking different beverages then. I noticed you're all typically on the cider, am I right?
Oh, did you listen to last week's episode?
I believe you might have been having a recorder league. Is that right?
Yes, some very sweet ciders. I prefer a cider, but I'll drink whatever someone puts in front of me.
No, fair enough. I found it quite amusing, actually, that Big T sort of thought that it was some kind of high-cultured cider. I don't think he'd ever heard of a recorder league before.
Which I found hilarious because they're sort of what I've been drinking since I was 16.
Yeah, exactly.
So...
It's like he was unaware of the goon bag, frankly. You know,
exactly.
It's been around for a while.
So uncultured.
Now, regular TVT listeners, Pat, could you just tell them a little bit about Sports Best Friends before we get into some footy talk? How did it start and why should they listen?
Well, Sports Best Friend started with Big T. He was the creator, and I think, sort of started doing it with a few of his other friends, just because all he ever does in life in general is talk about rugby league and the Tigers. So I think it was his outlet for other people who actually want to listen to him, listening to him.
Love it.
And then, I sort of got involved, and he and I worked together. So it was just a good way for him and I to catch up and talk about our common interests as well. But we basically just discuss NRL while drinking.
I love it, and
that's why you should listen to it.
Exactly, and it beats the hell out of just yelling out things for a witch's hat on a street corner as well, because to have a genuine forum is an advantage.
Absolutely. You know that the people that are listening must in some way want to be there listening to you, which is great.
Normally everything I say comes with an acid tongue and an air of satirical nature about it, but I genuinely, listening to your podcast is a bit like entering the bubble of a group of genuine friends, which I'm actually quite envious about because Chip Jones, my offsider, hates my guts. So we can't quite achieve that. So kudos to you guys for doing that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, I think that's our... That's kind of the charm of our podcast, I think, is that we are all genuinely super best friends. So we have sort of that good connection, and we know what each other are talking about, and it is really genuine. So it's really nice.
Yeah, and well, I can tell you that it definitely comes across. Now, of course, you are a huge Souths fan. They're competition favourites, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but they are.
Premiership favourites,
yeah,
bingo.
Comp heavyweights. This is actually quite a Roosters-friendly poddy. I guess I could describe it as that. So
yes, I'm very aware.
So I'm almost tempted to start some serious trash talk with you, but I'm not going to in the interests of just pure civility. But I am interested, Pat, in how you became a Souths fan. Were you just a huge fan of the Russell Crowe film Proof of Life with Meg Ryan, or was this something more organic?
That's it. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. Just love Russell Crowe. No, my dad is an absolute diehard. He's been a South Sydney supporter since the beginning of time, and I had no other option when I was younger. But it's something that he and I also really bond over and enjoy talking about together. So. Yeah. It's just really nice, yeah. So that's how I got into Souths, and then now I have no option but to stay.
And when you say you were sort of had no other choice, I'm assuming your dad didn't produce a pistol and say you need to support Souths on pain of death. Was it a more subtle art of persuasion?
Whatever the next level down from that is, it was about that intense, I think.
Fair enough. So a flick knife.
He wants to. I think it's in his will to be buried in a South Sydney coffin. So.
That is, you know what? That is diehard fandom when you're willing to be emblazoned in a box for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. That's about the level that he's at.
Fair enough, Pat. And look, to be honest with you, I just play up the Souths Roosters rivalry for the most part. But my only genuine gripe, I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do. 2014, great year for Souths. They won the comp.
Great year.
But my big gripe was the fact that they decided to hold their grand final parade through a couple of eastern suburbs places like Coogee and Randwick. And it's still to this day, it doesn't sit well with me. It kind of feels like, I don't know, going up to a war-scarred Muslim and wishing them a happy Hanukkah on the West Bank. It just seems a little bit insensitive, but I could be wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I personally love it as someone who lived in that area. I personally loved it. It seemed like Roosters fans didn't have anything to celebrate. We were just sharing some of the love.
Oh, is that what it was? You were sharing the joy of the win.
Sharing the joy, yeah, absolutely. Just letting you, giving you a bit of a reminder, and it did. It totally boosted you guys to win it in the next few years. So you're welcome.
Yeah, I suppose in a way you did provide motivation to definitely get better. Because we couldn't have that happen.
The Roosters flags were up flying high a few years later, so
and
no harm done.
Yeah, you're right. And I even believe, I don't think I'm wrong about this, the Randwick Council was besieged by angry calls because they'd actually put up bunnies flags on Coogee Beach. And it caused to the ire of a lot of Roosters fans. And I've never done this. I'm not the type of person to write into a broadcaster with an angry letter because I'm not, born in 1933 for a start. But I actually did email the council and let them know about my disgust, which I've never done before or since. I know. I regret it.
The outrage.
I know. We live in the outrage culture. I just thought jump aboard.
Yeah, why not? Join in.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you what, though, Pat, the 2019 is potentially on track to produce a Roosters Bunnies grand final. What will the vibe be if that happens? Oh, yeah. Do you think it'll be toxic or would it be amazing?
I mean, I love the idea. I mean, I'm a South supporter who doesn't hate the Roosters. I think I've made that like really clear on Sports Best Friends. I don't hate the Roosters.
Yeah.
I actually love a lot of your players, but I just think that would be awesome. I really do. Like, I think that sort of that rivalry would like rear its head, but I think in a friendly fire kind of way. I would hope.
Yeah, you'd hope so. I hope the tone would be pretty good. I've just got the horrible image of, I don't know, fans kind of congregating from each side around Anzac Parade somewhere, maybe between Randwick and Maroubra. Yeah, exactly. South fans armed with cricket bats and Roosters fans armed with cold hard cash.
Yeah, Kingsford under fire. Hopefully it wouldn't come to that.
I hope
Hopefully
not.
it wouldn't come to that, but I can imagine in my mind, yes.
No, I actually genuinely think it'd be amazing as well, because it's the oldest rivalry in rugby league. And although I think you and I are a little bit jovial about it, there's definitely a percentage of fans who don't find the funny side of the rivalry. So to be there at that, oh yeah, it'd be great to see the animosity in a weird sort of way, even though it's not in the majority. I'd like to see a faction of fans get quite angry about it.
Oh, I agree. I think you need to have some of the anger, some of the fire. It makes it incredibly interesting. If it does come down to a Roosters South premiership, I would love it for it to be a really, really close game so that there wasn't too much fallout afterwards. Because I can just imagine if it was a complete blowout one side or the other, just the taunting.
Yeah, exactly.
Would be unbearable.
Exactly. And your old man, does it feel the same way about it in terms of not taking the rivalry too harshly?
My dad's a different type of person. He's not quite like me. He's very heavily into the sledging. So I don't know particularly how seriously he takes it, but he online and on Facebook he takes it incredibly seriously.
Okay, so your dad's actually venting his rage in the cyber world as well.
Oh yes, he has many different. He's the administrator of heaps of different sledging groups on Facebook, and he loves it. That's his passion, is just taking the piss.
Yeah,
basically.
fair enough. There's nothing wrong with roast humour. I think there is a line somewhere. I think this show has sometimes missed it.
It's all in good humour.
Exactly. If it all comes from a good place, then I kind of feel like all's fair in love and war. But as long as it's not malicious. But
he's not an aggressive person, if that's what you're worried
no,
about.
No.
He's got a smile on his face.
But so did Ivan Milat, I hear, when he was committing his crimes. So not always the acid test, Pat. But look,
shit.
I'm certainly not inferring, by the way, that your dad is Ivan Milat. I just want that stated for the record. Now, today is a special. Today's a special State of Origin theme show, and we might as well start with your beloved Souths reps. Now, two guys making their debut in Cameron Murray and Cody Walker. I don't think I've missed anyone else on debut for the Blues. How do you think they're going to fare on Wednesday night?
I'm so excited for them. I think Cody Walker's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I've got that feeling.
Really vocal about that.
Yeah, and have you seen, like for me, I guess from the outside looking in, it's always different when you're a fan of the club, but I've always thought that guy's a pretty good player, but it feels like this year he's set the ground alight. Am I right in that, or has he always just been awesome and I've missed it?
I think he's always been good. I think this year definitely he's really shone. I think in those moments that we've really needed someone to step up and we've been under a lot of pressure, he's been that person that's just stepping up and making things happen. And especially him running off Cook, I think their combination is amazing. So I think he's going to be great. And Cam Murray, I think, will be good, fine. I'm not like super excited to have him there or anything. I think he's great for us on the field. It could be one of those situations where he plays his first Origin game and it's not brilliant. I'm very prepared for that.
Okay. I like the fact you're such a realist about it, because normally people are so myopic about these things and their own players are going to carve, but you're like, Cam Murray, he'll have an average game.
I kind of want to play it down and then be pleasantly surprised so that people don't throw it back in my face later. I think it's my tactic.
I like that. Insulate yourself from the insults. It's a good way to do it.
Yes.
Because you're a South fan, this is also a good segue to ask you about this. So from my point of view, I thought Adam Reynolds was going to be a lock to play. From all the talk, all the paper talk and the way he's playing, everyone was like, he's definitely going to be selected. And then he got injured. And it seems like Cleary got selected in front of him because Freddie thought Reynolds was injured, but then it turns out he's actually not injured after all. It's very confusing, especially seeing as Reynolds seemed to pick up an injury last game. Is Adam Reynolds unlucky not to have made the team? I kind of feel like with the connection with Cody Walker and Cook, he would have been amazing.
Yeah, I think he was, to be honest, lucky to be considered in the fact that I think it was dependent on if Cook and Walker were going to be considered. But the fact that Cook and Walker got in and he didn't, I think that is unlucky. I feel like they based a lot of their decisions on the last round. And Cleary had an amazing game with the Panthers, which was the first one all season.
Yep.
And he copped a little bit of an injury, and I think that tipped the scales, which I think is really unfortunate for him.
Yeah, it just seemed like bad timing, didn't it? Everyone just assumed, because it looked like a bad injury, so everyone just assumed, well, Reynolds is out, and then they've gone, okay, so you go.
No, I was just going to say he is very biscuity, as Big T says. Like, he does break very easily, so it wasn't surprising that they thought it was a bit more major than it was.
Absolutely, he's brittle, isn't he? He's kind of got he's the osteoporosis advocate for NRL.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's funny. I remember seeing him not by chance outside of an X-ray place at Bondi Junction, and it actually occurred to me I didn't realise he's such a small guy. And NRL is, you expect halfbacks to be a bit diminutive, a little bit smaller, but he was quite small. I was shocked.
Yeah, very small, because he goes to the same chiropractor physio that I do, so I see him quite often, and I'm quite a small person, and he's not very much bigger than I am.
Do you ever just sort of push him over your shoulder and carry him around the surgery a bit just to prove it?
Just wrap him up in my arms and just carry him around like a baby all the time.
That's great. Give him a noogie just because you can.
Keep him humble.
That's it. Now, this is a bit of an off-the-wall question, but every person I ask this to says no. So I'm going to ask you, do you think Damien Cook looks French? I got this weird thing the first time I ever saw him. He's got that little moustache. I've always thought, that guy looks French. He's the most French-looking player in rugby league. And am I just off my tree here? Because I think he'd look at home in a Yoplait ad.
No, I'm actually laughing so much because as soon as you said that, I was like, he does look a bit French.
He looks a bit French, right?
And my friends call him the chef. And so when I think of the chef, I also think of French things as well. So that's kind of in line with how I'm thinking as well. So I'm going to take your side on that one.
Oh, thanks, Pat. It feels nice.
It is the moustache.
It's the moustache, and it's the fact that I think his head the contours of his head would fit a beret so easily. And if he slung a sort of baguette over his shoulder.
Slight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy to hear that you say that, because I just thought, well, I'm going to have to actually admit defeat on this one, that I'm mad. But you know what? From now on, just on the basis of this alone, I'm going to go around belting that around the city as hard as I can.
Great. I'm so glad.
Now, State of Origin, Pat, I need to get your thoughts. I'm assuming because you're a South fan, you're also a Blues fan?
Oh, I think everyone who is born in New South Wales has to be a Blues fan.
It should be mandated by law, shouldn't it?
It should be on your birth certificate.
Absolutely. Like Godmother Brad Fittler, just to be down there in print. And what should be the repercussions for a fan that went AWOL and just said, I'm going to support Queensland?
Oh, what a great question.
Just straight out incarceration, or do you want something a little bit harsher?
I think straight out incarceration is fine for now, for a first offence, and then if they don't change their ways, we might have to look at some harsher consequences.
I love it. It's very Chinese government of you, and I think that's the way we should handle things here in Australia as well. Do you have any predictions for Wednesday night? I think most people are thinking it's going to be a pretty tight contest. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is going to be really tight. I think the fact that it's at Suncorp is not working in our favour as well. I think it's Queensland have won 5 out of 6 of their last games at Suncorp, so that's irking me a little bit because I'm a big believer in the home ground advantage.
Yep, and that's just sheer stats, isn't it?
Souths game.
Yeah, that's right. That's certainly a worry for me as well. They seem to almost evolve into a different species in Queensland, the Maroons. It's like all of a sudden, the likes of Kalen Ponga might look a bit wolf-like. It's almost they become a different creature, and it's certainly a more aggressive one. So I'm a little bit worried. My big fear actually is the halves a little bit. As much as I know you love Cody Walker, and I'm a big fan as well now, I feel like their halves combination has a hell of a lot more experience in this kind of arena than ours, and seemed a little bit more established, a bit more dangerous. Do you have any worries about the halves?
No, I do agree with that. I think that they, in terms of them being more established, I think the thing that Queensland have had over New South Wales for the last few years is that their team is generally more established than our team. We sort of mix our team around a little bit more and put some new people in and try some different combinations, which I like, and I think that it can lead to some really good outcomes. But their team's kind of a bit more consistent. They've played together a bit more. A lot of them are from the same team, whether it be the Storm or the Broncos. So I think they have that kind of advantage. But I'm just hoping that we're training our asses off at camp and we're coming up with some good combinations there, because I think that the individual people are great, and possibly I think that they're even better than the Queensland half. So
You're
hopefully
right.
it just comes together.
Yeah, me too. I've got that hope, and I just hope that Freddie, in between riding llamas in the middle of outback New South Wales, he does find some time to come up with some strategy. Do you have any bold predictions for man of the match? And also, I don't know if I got an absolute from you from who's going to win.
I think that New South Wales is going to win. I think I have to say that, because otherwise I'm going to jinx them. I'm a big believer in that. I'm knocking on wood as we speak. So I think New South Wales will win, and I'm really hoping that Damien Cook gets man of the match, just because I'm obsessed with him. That's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, me too. And I really hope he gives the man of the match speech in French, just to
Yes.
furnish my point a little bit more. Where do you
Let's
normally
add the
watch
punch
it,
to the
Pat?
game.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have a bit of a tradition in terms of watching Game 1 of Origin? Some people are a little bit superstitious about that kind of thing.
I don't really have a tradition, but I think for the last 2 years we've gone to the same local bolo, which is just a very average little bolo, sort of equidistant between mine and T's house.
The
And
best.
we just get some really sort of dodgy pub food and some like barely passable drinks, and you get just front row seats to this big screen, and we watch every game there with a bunch of our mates. So
That's excellent.
hopefully, we did that every game last year and we won, so we'll just keep doing it this year.
Yeah, don't break the habit, even though the habit is only one series so far. Keep doing it,
Yeah,
just
well,
because it
that's
might be
how
working.
habits form.
And it being in a bolo, when you got really excited last year, did you end up crowd surfing on the shoulders of a bunch of octogenarians, or?
I wish that there was enough people there for me to crowd surf on. I don't think you understand how small this bolo is.
I haven't got the right visual, clearly. I've got, I don't know, some kind of booper ad in my mind where there's just a 90 really jovial old people sort of cradling you on their very crushed shoulders. But potentially I'm picking up the ball and running with it too much there.
Yeah, it was more like 15 of what you're saying, but 15 of them.
Well, just for the record, my routine every year is to eat a punnet of blueberry ice cream naked on my favourite couch, which is awkward because my favourite couch is at my sister's place, so it's a bit weird. But seeing as it seems to have worked last year, I'm definitely sticking to it this year. To round off things, Pat, I guess there's a bit of griping on Twitter. That's not unusual, but this time about Origin-affected games. Do you have any opinions on the 4 games that are going? It's hard to get jazzed about them. Do you think that the comp should be stopped, or are you happy with having the kind of split round thing?
Oh, I would love for the comp to be stopped. I sort of agree that I think these 4 games that are playing, no one really cares about them. Everyone's just waiting for Wednesday. And, I mean, obviously we have 4 people out for Origin. We also have like 4 or 5 of our main people injured. So as a South supporter, I would have loved for the Premiership to have taken a pause.
Absolutely.
For my own selfish needs, because I mean, I don't want to complain again about having players out for Origin, because it is amazing to have so many good players in your team, and I think it's great for them to play some rep footy, but it's affecting our Premiership contendership. So I don't want to. I'd love for it to stop.
I know, and it's always meant to be that time of the year where the Warriors make their run, and everyone goes, "Oh, the Warriors are on a run," and then everyone realises it's because they've got no Origin reps, and they're playing against third-string teams. Yeah,
absolutely.
Look, I agree with you, Pat. It's sort of, I don't know, it's hard for me to get excited about it. I haven't fallen asleep in too many games this year, but I have to admit, the one the other night I didn't make to the end of. That's probably more to do with my heroin habit than anything else. But also, I think the game could be a little bit more exciting. It's sort of a bit like watching your favourite Seinfeld episode, except there's no Georgia Elaine, and instead Will Smith's playing most of the roles. It's not as good.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's the opposite of what Origin is, which Origin is watching all of your favourite characters playing one amazing game. these rounds of football is the complete opposite of that. It is like watching your favourite TV show with your least favourite characters.
You're 100%
So
right.
anticlimactic.
Yeah, you're right. And even the commentary, every now and then they go, "Oh, number 11's got it," because they don't know who he is.
Because they don't know who he is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, look, Pat, thanks again for sharing your thoughts and coming on the show today. I do really appreciate your time because I know it's the weekend and I'm sure you want to be out boozing. I know I'm certainly going to be doing that later on. But before you go, are you able to tell the TVT listeners, how they get to listen to Sports Best Friends? Where can they find it? Is it iTunes, Twitter, Tinder?
You can, all of those places. You can find it. You can find it on your little purple podcast app. You can find it. Well, you can't listen to it on Instagram, but you can find a lot of posts about it on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just go everywhere, listen to it everywhere.
Awesome, Pat. Thanks again. And pass on my regards to the team and Big T. And hopefully one day, you never know, I might even come along in person to yours if I ever get invited and Big T takes that apprehended violence order off against me.
Oh, we would be so lucky.
Thanks, Pat. Have a great day and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
No worries.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Pat, for coming on the show, and I very much look forward to downing a recorder league behind the scoreboard of Leichhardt Oval soon. But now it's time to chat with comedian Rob Brown about the upcoming Origin series. Now, I must warn you all that things got a little heated, as we're both from opposite sides of the Tweed. But after all the name-calling was done and the cigarette burns healed on the frenulum of my penis, we both came together to agree that Dally Cherry Evans does indeed have an unusually elongated neck. Enjoy.
Hey, mate, how are you?
G'day, Rob. How you going, mate? Welcome back to the potty.
Very well. Thank you. How's it all going?
Mate, everything's pretty good my end, mate. Just gearing up for Origin Week. You know how it is. I've dyed everything that I own blue, including my wife. She's not very happy about that.
Well, yeah, it's hard to tell, though.
Yeah, that's right. Mate, how's things your end? I know this is obviously... I actually wanted to get your ideas on this because I know that you live in Queensland, but I believe you once told me that you're from the Shire. So where do your where do your allegiances lie?
My allegiances lie with Queensland.
Okay.
I've lived in Queensland all my life, so...
Gotcha. All right. So was that Shire period, was that just like one of these sort of brief chapters in your life you'd just rather forget about?
Well, it was something that was I was born there, and then without any consultation we moved, and as that's what happened in the 70s. You didn't ask a 3-year-old what they wanted. And,
you had no agency.
Times have changed. So, there's no kids helpline when I was a kid. Well, it wouldn't have mattered. We didn't have the phone on. But no, so we left there. We left there very early on, and it's funny. I went down there years ago, and a few years back, and there's a photo of my mum holding me as a baby on the rocks at the beach, and my wife and I were there, and I said, "Oh, that's where it is." The photo. That was kind of cool. We went across the road to the pub, and I'm a bit nostalgic, and I say to the barmaid, I was born here. So I don't live here. I'm not a local. But she goes, no, you're not. I was like, oh, fuck.
Mate, so I can see why then you're a dyed-in-the-wool Maroon supporter. Then in that case, obviously this is a very State of Origin themed show, so we'll try to keep things in that frame today. And we'd love to talk about where Queensland think the Blues' weaknesses are, but they're not actually allowed to talk about them. What do you make of Kevin Walters' plan of having a no Blues policy, Rob? Do you think that'll work?
No Blues policy.
Yeah, they're not allowed to even utter the words.
No, it's a great plan. It's a great plan. I'm just concerned that they're going to be shocked when they work out there's other people in front of them on Wednesday. It's all right to talk about them, but I just hope they see them and tackle them, because that's going to be the issue.
Absolutely.
Acknowledging you have a problem is part of the solution. If you and the Blues are a problem. They are certainly a problem.
Yeah, they will need to beat them.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is a very strange thing, and I guess from a Blues point of view, I guess we've always seen the advantage of Queensland is the fact that they can get so fucking angry at the Blues, and that's why they win, because they get sort of whipped up into this fervour where they actually don't want to just beat the Blues, they want to severely injure them. So I'm wondering if Kevin is missing a trick here, because I think part of Queensland's success over the years is the fact that they fucking hate New South Wales.
Absolutely, and here's the thing too. Here's the thing: is what Mal Meninga did when he was running the show is that he made it very much about history and nostalgia. So you imagine, you're running out there, and Wally Lewis hands you his jersey and goes, "That's my jersey."
That's amazing.
Wear
Yeah.
that with pride. When Mal Meninga hands over his jersey, when Langer hands Cherry Evans his jersey and goes, "That's mine." That is incredibly powerful. You don't have to talk about anybody else. You've got legends of the game going, "You're representing me out there now." And these kids are 23, 24. They're excited. They've finally been going, "Okay, if you think you're good enough, here's your chance." And some will make it, and some will fall over. And some will fall over and then go on to make it, i.e. Justin Hodges.
That's right. Yeah, the infamous game where he just had a shocker, and yet they still won. Queensland still won that match.
That's the only reason he had a career afterwards.
Mate,
it would have ended that night.
You're 100% right, mate. And you're right. Imagine getting one of these icons of Queensland to hand you your jersey. And as you quite rightly said, there's a lot of players out there for Queensland who are quite young, and I'm worried that might not be aware of the origin story for Queensland, and they might run out going, "Who the fuck are these guys? Where are the Walgett Wolves?"
Oh, don't you worry. They'll be schooled enough on what it means to be a Queenslander.
I bet.
That's the difference. That's the difference. These guys are playing for pride, especially at home, especially game one. I think game one is going to be the hardest game for New South Wales, to be completely honest.
I agree with you, mate. I'm secretly, as most New South Wales fans always are, we just always secretly know we're going to lose. That's the thing that's under the surface. Like Queenslander fans, they just always seem confident that they're going to win, even when their team on paper isn't as good. Which hasn't been very, very much the case recently. But even New South Wales, the culture's a little bit different. I think we're a little bit more, there's a lot more self-doubt involved. And I always think about one video in particular, Rob, always comes to mind when I think about the difference between the fans of Queensland and New South Wales. And it was it leaked onto YouTube, and it was a Queensland fan after Game 3 a couple of years ago. Queensland had won. And there was this woman, she was probably 55 years old, at Suncorp. It was the post-match presentation, and she didn't want to miss it so badly that she pissed her own seat. And she urinated. And that's the difference, Rob, for me, between the fans.
Yeah.
It's not even the game. She didn't want to miss the presentation.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is outrageous. I was chatting to Kevy Walters at a lunch once, and he was saying that he was out there on the field for Origin, and he's running around, and there's like 8 minutes to go, and they're trailing by about 4 or 5, whatever it was, and he's getting a bit nervous, and he says to GI, he goes, "Come on, guys, you got to get," and GI just put his hand on his shoulder and goes, "It's all right, we got this," and they did.
They did, yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
Because if Queensland is trailing by 10 points with 3 minutes to go, they know they've got it won.
Mate, that is just in their ethos, isn't it? And I can
insanity.
Yeah, and I can tell you from south of the border, the attitude is, I think Queensland have got this one. But we think the same thing. That's the issue.
Yeah.
And it happened, it was a few years ago, it happened to us, where it was game 2. If we just could have wrapped up the series, and you could just see the body language in the Blues players just thought, I think they're going to get us.
The second half, the Blues won the first half quite resoundingly. Came out in the second half, and Queensland just walked all over the top of them. It's that mentality. It is a mentality, and I think it's what makes Origin exciting.
Well, I have to say, Rob, I'm a little bit concerned. Well, not for the New South Wales Blues, obviously, but I'm concerned for the Maroons that this Kevin Walters strategy might backfire. What do you think the punishment should be for a player who inadvertently utters the words New South Wales Blues in camp?
Oh God, what should they do to them? I don't know.
Should they have to wipe the fatty deposits off Clive Palmer's stomach, or?
Jeez, that's some wiping. Maybe it's their job for the day to stoke Cherry Evans' ego. Maybe that becomes like their job for the day. Their job is just continually walk around agreeing with everything Daly says about himself. And I think that
I love
does
it.
two things. That brings back into focus why we don't want to be raising the Blues, because the punishment is horrible, but it also fills Cherry's need to be loved and cared for. So I think that's that's important.
That'll work. What's your personal opinion of Cherry Evans, Rob? Are you happy with him being selected as captain?
Look. What annoys me is he is an amazing player, and nothing frustrates me more than a douchebag with ability. And I hate the fact that you suddenly, mate, you're amazing, and he goes, you don't know the fucking half of it, and you go, oh, okay, all right, see you. It's too much for me. Daly's too much,
and he had a great game 3 last year, didn't he? When he came up and got into that into the game, and he just ruled it. Yeah,
mate, he is. Well, put it this way: I think Queensland were looking for an opportunity not to pick him after the Titans debacle.
Yep.
Remember, he was coming up.
That's right, and he backflipped.
And he wasn't, and the club had already signed him. And that was, and that Queensland was angry at that.
Yeah, I bet the Titans were pretty angry too.
Oh, they were filthy. So
it's okay, mate. They managed to wrap up the signature of Dale Copley, so everything sort of even Stevens.
Yeah, there you go.
Mate,
dodged the bullet there.
Yeah, Cody Walker, Rob. He's been making headlines. Obviously, he's come out and said he's not going to be singing the national anthem during Origin. For some reason, this has sort of caused some ire in the media. I guess I'm wondering, why do we give a shit?
Yeah, I don't think we do. I think the media want us to tell us we do.
Yeah.
But I don't think we do. And in fact, I understand why he doesn't want to sing it.
Absolutely.
I won't be singing the second verse. That's just a decision I've made. Mainly because I don't know it.
Yeah, me either.
But I get why they don't want to sing the national anthem. But there's nothing disrespectful about it. You can't make someone sing a song. Yeah, I find Adokar and Walker and Latrell Mitchell, those guys have all come out and said, "Look, we're not going to sing the anthem."
Mm.
Okay, fair enough. I respect that. And most New South Wales people, let's be honest, just go, please, just don't refuse to dive into the in-goal area. Just don't refuse to do that, please. Don't refuse to run very fast.
Exactly.
Don't refuse to be amazing, please. I'll tell you what, wouldn't it be good if we had, instead of that once-a-year game where they have the Australian, Indigenous sides playing
the All-Stars,
Whiteys, and it's an awkward team. It's hard to go for a side there. It's very awkward without looking racist.
100%.
You cannot cheer for anybody. Well, you can cheer for the Indigenous side, otherwise you look racist. And but I would love to see an Indigenous side in the NRL.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, interesting idea. Unfortunately, I think if that happened, every other team would be shithouse. That'd be the issue.
Yeah.
Because
I tell you what it would do. The salary cap would be their biggest killer. Not in wages, just in parties.
Yeah.
I think it would be because these guys would be winning everything.
100%. How could they? I mean,
they would be winning everything.
It's amazing. I mean, even the Indigenous, I love the Indigenous game this year, actually. You're right. They changed it from the All-Stars, which was a bad look. And, as you said, who gets behind the All-Stars, like the white guys?
Yeah.
It just felt strange. So,
white guys. It's the weird chant,
Yeah, you can't. Outside of the southern states of the US, it just seems contextually inappropriate. I know.
Brown people, boo. Like, that's just horrible.
Tough to get an investment. In fact, I'm pretty sure they didn't sell much merch outside of Tasmania. So it'd be a tough one to walk around with. But Rob, it strikes me that this issue of the national anthem isn't just about players. It's also about the song itself, because I guess as far as anthems goes, this one's a pretty shit one. And most people don't know the words at the best of times. Every now and then someone latches onto the word girt. And then, wealth of toil or something, wealth for toil.
Yeah.
And it just seems that, most of the wealth in this country goes to large duplicitous mining companies who leave their creditors high and dry. So it just seems to not ring true.
Yeah, that's they are the beauties that we are bound with, coal mines. That's
it.
That's the beauty we were given.
I'm pretty sure your state, mate, is trying to get the words Adani put into the national anthem. It's part of the sponsorship agreement.
Well, look, we're doing not so much. I live in southeast Queensland, where humans are. If you go north of here, in the mulga, we call it. There's people up there actively thinking that a billionaire Indian is coming over to do what he can to help North Queensland. So if you're ever selling a bridge, I know a real estate market that would be right up for it. It's they'd be all over it. So
Rob,
it's hilarious.
I'm thinking the way to solve this, Rob, might be to actually change the anthem to one that we want to sing as a country together. So I'm proposing, maybe Joe Dolce, "Shut Up Your Face."
Shut up.
Yeah, no, you go.
No, Kaysan, I think would be good. Working Class Man, something people know the words to.
That'd be fantastic. And then Barnesy, well, the thing is, Barnesy will be run off his feet. He'd be enlisted to talk, to sing at every event across Australia. It'd probably drive him into an early grave, but I'd certainly love to. I'd love to see it happen.
Wouldn't it be great? Yeah, I think that would be an awesome man.
Just as a bit of a smoky, Stacey's Mum by Fountains of Wayne. I wouldn't mind seeing that as well.
There you go.
Bit of a weird one, but look, Rob, I need to
I
go
don't
across.
think anyone object to singing it though.
I don't think they would.
No one
See,
would object to that.
and the best part is it's not like anyone's excluded. Like in the current anthem, Indigenous people are excluded, which is why they think it's a shit song. Fair point.
Yes.
Stacey's Mum is not about anyone apart from Stacey's mum, who's hot. So no one feels
hot,
excluded.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, except for ugly chicks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's true,
fat
actually.
blokes.
Never
So,
thought about that.
Oh, but even us fat blokes, we think we're in with a chance. It's a song. Who knows?
Yeah, I
Anything
love
can
it.
happen.
Yeah, it's
I really
aspirational. That's what I think about it.
Yeah.
Mate, south of the border, Rob, Freddie obviously taken over the helm last year to some success, won the first series. There's a bit of a blight from some sections of the media saying Freddie's a bit too relaxed. Do you think he takes an overly relaxed approach to coaching?
Well, see, this is what happens when you get a guy who played the game not out of hard work and effort, just out of sheer skill. No, I think he's one of these guys that I think he expects people to know what to do. Like he just expects it. He's got a great side who's coming up against a side that is pretty depleted. You know, no Slater, no Cronk, no Smith, no Thurston. You know, there's a few big names to take out of a side. And so I think his win was great last year. Had a fantastic win, but they lost the third one in Queensland pretty convincingly.
Mate, you're right, and I certainly see no false confidence about us. I think we are going to be up against it, especially in Queensland. But what do you make of things like that Brad Fittler's doing, where he's making players, competing training sessions with bare feet on the grass? He's getting them to consult with llamas. He's sort of getting a very sort of Shaolin monk approach to rugby league.
I don't think you really know the size of your commitment until you've put it inside yourself, and I think that's what Freddie's doing. He's making all the players carry the pride, and if that means rolling naked and interlocking toes with other men, then so be it. It's
the price you have to pay.
It's the price you pay for stardom. The things you do for love could also be an anthem choice there, and would explain that training session.
I love it. Let's put that. By the way, let's put that national anthem. I'll put that on Twitter and just see what our listeners think, because we need to get to the bottom of this. Look, there was a bit of an issue earlier in the year, Rob. I'm sure you're aware. In fact, we spoke about it last time. It was the rugby league sex tape scandals. I'm just wondering, what are the odds of an Origin special sex tape emerging? Do you think one will surface? And if so, who's going to be starring in it?
Well, I think it'll be the New South Wales side, and Freddie will be trying to explain that as a training exercise. That's what I think is going to happen. I mean, to the naked eye, it looks like a sex tape, but when you really study it,
it's a bonding session.
It's a sex tape.
What you see there is what looks to be Cody Walker performing a 69. It's actually us really thinking about our defence in the red zone.
That's a trust exercise.
Mate,
you can't get any more trusting. That's,
the only breach of trust was someone who leaked it on WhatsApp. That was the issue. Mate, I have to admit, I've thought about this question, and probably too much, to be completely honest, to an unwholesome level, but I kind of hope that it's David Gallop and Raylene Castle. It'd just be so unpalatable to think about that it kind of, like one of those gross memes you see on Twitter, where an elephant's masturbating all over the face of a baby giraffe or something. It's gross, but you're compelled to watch it. You can't not look away.
Yeah. Then you've got to try and explain this erection was here before you started watching it. And it's had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Why are my pants tight? I feel like I just sneezed 1,000 times in my pants. It's,
Please, honey, don't divorce me. If you supported another state or country, Rob, entering the State of Origin series, which is obviously a bit sacrilegious to say, it's a fight to the death between two states. But in the future, we always have to think about future-proofing the game. Who do you think would be another state or territory or country to enter the contest?
Tonga.
Okay, they'd be good.
Tonga. That'd be great. That's what all these. I feel sorry for all these kids that have made this decision to not play Origin and only play one game every 4 years for Tonga. I don't understand.
What do I love about Tonga? Not just the fact that I love all these Pacific Island nations emerging because, they're such a strong influence on the game and they're naturally adept at it. But what I particularly love are these, the war dances before the game. And Tonga's was genuinely, I'm not Tongan in the remotest, especially in the size of my penis. But, it made the hairs stand up on my neck because it was so good to watch.
Yeah, it's look, there's some great players there, and if the NRL doesn't start including them in something very soon, then these guys' decisions to be only play for Tonga is going to be questionable.
I agree with you, mate. And look, just for my 2 cents, I wouldn't mind seeing the Swiss enter the series, just because I want to see Roger Federer play prop forward.
Yeah, okay. No, fair enough. No, that'd be...
They call him the Iceman, but let's see under pressure how he handles it. That's the thing. That's it. To finish off, Robert. Yeah, to finish off, mate. Do you have any predictions for the game? Obviously, you're a dyed-in-the-wool Queenslander, but even without your myopia and your bias, who do you think is going to win on Wednesday?
I think it'll be. I really think Queensland will win on Wednesday, but I think the series will go to New South Wales 2-1.
Oh wow, that is very objective.
That's what I think will happen.
Okay, fair enough, mate.
That's not what I want to happen.
Yep.
But I think that is what will happen.
I really think.
If Queensland can get some ascendancy on Wednesday night, they have to win the game on Wednesday night, or it's a 3-0 wash. But I think if they win the game on Wednesday night, they may be able to carry enough to Perth to believe in themselves and go, "Here's our chance to win it here." Let's go and play at an empty stadium in Sydney next, on game 3.
mate, I'll have you know, we once cracked a 10,000 mark, all right? So don't you worry about that.
Yeah, we have hundreds of supporters.
Yeah.
You've got supporters here. His bike's out the front.
You have more people at the Caxton Hotel, I think. But anyway, you're very passionate. I won't hold that against you guys.
Well, the magic round, I think, was proof of how successful rugby league works in South East Queensland.
Oh, 100%. And they need another team there, if you ask me.
Absolutely. I'd like to suggest an Ipswich Jets team.
Yeah, bring it on.
Go to the city, the satellite city outside of Brisbane. It's massive. It would have huge appeal. It would have massive appeal. This is the club that produced the Walters and Langer, and that's it. But that's fucking four of them.
Mate, that's enough. That's enough for the argument. And is Ipswich still coached by the Walker brothers? Yeah, mate, I love those guys. I wish they'd come into first grade.
Well, I had some very good oil that the two Walker brothers were pretty much shoo-ins for the Titans coaching job. Before out of left field, they decided elsewhere.
Yeah, I thought that they were going to be a massive chance because they're one club that could actually afford to take a risk.
Well, look, they're proving that together they make a good team. They're doing some great stuff up here. They're working with some great kids, and the kids they're working with are doing well and moving on as well. So that's a sign of a good coach. Rob,
mate, before you go, where can people see you stand up, mate? And can they follow you on Twitter or on Facebook?
Comic Rob Brown. Facebook, Comic Rob Brown. All of my handles are at Comic Rob Brown. So
okay, even your grinder one?
Even my grinder one, yep.
Okay,
yep.
Good to know.
Just a note. I was blanketing, and my agent said it'd be good for me. So.
Mate, thanks so much for coming on the potty again, mate, and sharing your thoughts. And good luck to Queensland. I honestly think it's going to be a close game, and I have a bit of an unsettling feeling that we might not win, but we'll find out soon.
It'll be close. All right, mate.
Cheers,
take
Rob.
care.
Good chat. Now it's time to chat with a true Queensland legend, the ironically rowdy speedster from Serena, Mr. Dale Shearer.
Sorry, mate. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How you going? Thanks for coming on the potty, mate.
Happy days, yeah.
Mate, I really do appreciate it. And look, it's great, obviously, because we're coming up to Origin, and it's great to have a Queensland great, speak in what is normally a bit of a New South Wales Blues den. So I really appreciate it.
No worries.
When the series rolls around each year, do you get pretty pumped about it?
Mate, I have lately. To be honest, I didn't after. I did for a few years, and then oh, God, time gets away, mate. What is it now? 23 years. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I was very passionate about it after the fact, and then sort of dropped off for quite a while. But, of late I do. Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, that's great, mate. And I guess people often probably don't know about this, but you were the all-time try-scoring leader for the Maroons for quite a while until Greg Inglis knocked you off the perch. Was that day a good day or a bad day for you?
It was a good day because it meant Queensland got a try and won the game.
See, that's why Queensland win. It's not about ego. It's because you're always there for the state to win.
Yeah, no, mate, didn't want to. It was good. It was, we're on a roll at that stage, whatever it was, about 8 in a race. Yeah, I was happy for him, happy for Queensland. Obviously, it would have been nice to hold it, but yeah, mate, he's an excellent player and was, and fully deserved that. And as I say, it all results in another series win.
And mate, has the State of Origin series changed much since you were playing? Like, do you think there's any kind of noticeable differences in the way the game is these days as opposed to when you were there? I know, for example, there was certainly there's less biff now.
A bit of biff. Everyone loves a bit of biff, but no, mate, it's obviously a lot more structured now, a lot more professional. I don't think it's as exciting. I mean, one of my Origin tries, front row, Greg Young put a little grubber through and I scored, and well, you wouldn't even see one these days, but if they did in the last few years, the front row, he'd probably get the hook.
You're right, isn't it?
There's a lot of ad-lib and chip and chase, and that's something I loved, and it is a bit structured. It's good when the boys, either side, throw it around, but you just don't seem to see it happen as much, and even at the NRL level, unfortunately.
Do you think there's a solution to that, Rowdy, like the idea of getting it a bit less structured? Because I reckon this year seems to be maybe a slight trend back towards the days that you're talking about, bit more improvised play, but it's slow. It's a slow start.
Yeah, I think it has turned the corner. I don't know if we'll go back to what it was, but you do see it a bit. But the trouble is too, the defence. I was watching teams. There's new ploys with slowing the play down, and a few years back, Melbourne with the old chicken wing they got blamed for. But I've been watching a few games lately. There's 3 or 4 in a tackle, and they peel off slowly. It just slows the whole game down to the opportunity for some of the quicker blokes or halves to take off and make the most of that advantage. It's just sort of not there at the moment. Once again, it comes back to structure and the defensive line's in place. And even now, they've changed that rule with the strip ball, and you see 2 run in and 1 peels off to give the other bloke the opportunity. It's just probably making the most of the rules, I suppose.
Mate, do you
Which
think
dampens the game,
I agree with you, mate. Do you think that if you were playing today, that you would have been as successful as you were? Because it seemed to me that you were a guy that sort of revelled in the unstructured environment.
That too, but I think most definitely, I love training, always did, and it, obviously, mate, if they're not better these days, I mean, no disrespect to myself or any others, you're training every day or 3 or 4 hours, and back my old day, I was an electrician, apprentice electrician. I still had to go to work, and even when I played in the final against the Bulldogs in '85, I dug trenches for bloody 6-7 hours, rushed home to have a shower, out of the SCG to play a semi-final,
Such a different world, isn't it?
Yeah, but I've got no doubt the players back then, and I'm not giving myself right, but we would be a lot better player because you can work on your skills all day long,
Yeah.
I was probably, my first season was 10 grand and 40 grand and 180 grand.
It's such a different, yeah. And as you said, you would have had other jobs at the same time, something a lot of the players these days obviously don't have to contend with.
No, well, I was trying to get in the Boston net and knock off at lunchtime. But anyway, you got you're digging, because I was an apprentice, I'm digging trenches 40 metres long for bloody 5 or 6 hours and cramping up the arms. That's when you got to go over the final that day.
That's a pretty good excuse, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think to answer your question, if we could go out and practice bombs and kicking and grubbers and bloody, passing all day long, yeah, there's no doubt we would have, you'd be better players, especially people like myself that love the game and just want to train. You'd be so much better. I would have loved the opportunity what they do with these cross-field bombs now. I just love them, but it sort of wasn't part of the game then,
I always think about old Origin moments as well, mate. And I guess the footage that comes to mind for you is that time that you chased down ET from basically a standing start and you stopped him from scoring. Do you remember that moment at all?
And he was suggesting, someone sent it to me and said, I didn't realise you were that fast. He was supposed to flick the switch and it was dark before he got to bed.
Mate, that must be surely that's a proud moment for you. When I mean, ET was always seen as the person that was like a flying machine, but you rammed him down in about 20 metres.
Yeah, I think the commentators got all excited and thought it was try time, but I sort of backed myself there and waited till I was pretty confident with my speed, to be honest, but I think I know I had ET covered. Sorry, ET.
If you're listening, ET. But it was, I guess, the beauty of that moment was just how quickly you reeled him in. And I guess it brings me to the next question, mate. I mean, what do you think your major strengths were? Obviously, speed was got to be up in the top couple, surely.
Yeah, mate, I like to read the game, and even Bozo said, I know a few times at training sessions, to hang off Rowdy. I wasn't the biggest around then. We didn't do weights then, but I had a bit of natural strength, and I always sort of somehow every now and again used to manage to offload balls and fighting the tackles. I think Wayne Pearce, which was great. He was a bit of a legend, rated me as one of the hardest. Well, he said it was the hardest bloke to tackle, because he said, I don't know whether he's running, he's going to chip over the top, sidestep me, or try and just shoulder me off,
Yeah.
Big rap coming from him. Cause,
absolutely.
One of the all-time greats and certainly a great defender, but he just said, I wouldn't know what he's going to do. So you're always in about 3 minds when he's running.
Mate, that's the thing, isn't it? It's your unpredictability, and as you alluded to before, like structure, sometimes the defenders only have a couple of things running through their mind, whereas a player like yourself might be able to do 3 or 4 different things at once. You would think twice about it. In the current Queensland team, Rowdy, I mean, do you think they can do it this year? How do you see Wednesday night going?
Mate, I'm very confident Wednesday night. So Billy Slater, like he's helping Carl. But I think the main thing is that I just think his appearance there, not only for trying to assist Carl, the whole team would get a boost from someone like that.
For sure. And I guess because he's been part of that dynasty, wasn't he? It's one of the guys in this 10-year period that just dominated. To have him around camp, that's got to make you feel good as a young player.
Oh, mate, so much respect there. As I say, it wouldn't just come from him trying to help someone else. It just come from the whole team seeing, you know what I mean?
What do you make of New South Wales being installed favourites to win this game? I know that happens pretty much every year, but for me, it's Queensland in Queensland, and I know they've had a lot of churn, but as you said, there's some great players that have come in there, like Kalen Ponga. You've got Cameron Munster. You've got Cherry Evans. It's a pretty dangerous team, if you ask me. Do you think that's a bit of a misnomer, the fact that New South Wales are favourites?
Well, I didn't realise it, mate. I'm quite surprised, to be honest.
Mate, put some money on.
I said that in the last interview in '95. Someone asked about that, and I think we got 18.5 start. We weren't supposed to have a punt that day, but well, the Neville Nobodies with Fatty and all the other so-called superhero Super League guys weren't picked, and Yeah, we ended up beating New South Wales 1-3-0.
I remember it. I remember it well, mate. It was one of the great victories, that one.
Yeah, but it's, mate, I was worried there, well, probably a month ago, Broncos, bloody Cowboys, not saying they all come from there, and Titans are all struggling, sitting down the bottom, and Storm got a few representatives, but we've come good at the right time. You know, Morgan's gone to the centres, but I honestly believe a lot of debate about Cherry Evans the last couple of years. I think if they would have picked him, I can't understand why they didn't pick him last year. He won man of the match against the Broncos in Melbourne, leading to the Origin series. I have no doubt if we picked him first up, we would have won that series.
Might have been a different story, yeah.
I've got, don't like to pick out individuals, but I've got some concerns over Hunt. I just don't know what goes on, even that third game last year. Just, I don't know whether it's pressure or kicking the wrong time, but we were ahead and you just had to consolidate and play it safe. And next we were under the pump and we could have lost that one. But I think they put Moses there just in case things don't go right. I think he can fill in at hooker, but yeah, I've got concerns. But anyway,
I'm with you.
Each their own, but I do my own little column, and I didn't make a mention of Daly not getting picked, and I think it did haunt us, I think if he got picked, I know. I'm very confident we would have won that series.
Mate, there's certainly a lot of people making that same argument, mate. And there were key moments in the series last year, weren't there, when you have to say Ben Hunt probably drew the wrong rein. There was a particular kick where they needed to put New South Wales under pressure and he kicked the ball dead, which is obviously the thing that probably gets condemned for the most there. But it's also the fact that, when you don't have someone like Cherry Evans there, he's sort of proven to be a leader, someone that can, I hate to use the cliche, but manage the game. Sometimes you could maybe, criticise Ben Hunt for not being able to manage the game as well as someone like Cherry Evans.
Well, what concerns me is the way St George has been going. And he's an integral part of that side. They're bloody struggling big time. But as I said, Daly won in the match. Melbourne and Storm leading into that. I just really still can't get my head around it. He's been and gone. But he is, to me, very composed. Might be a bit biased.
Yeah.
He played with his old man at Serena, and he played for Serena Juniors where I played. So probably him, and unbeknown to a lot of people, he's just a true gentleman, mate. You wouldn't meet a nicer bloke. All this crap about whatever with the Titans, but mate, every man and his dog's done that. Every club's done that. It was just done so cool for. It's just not his nature.
Yeah,
and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, mate. He's trying to look after himself and his family.
Mate, on the south of the border, mate, who do you think the major dangers from New South Wales are for Queensland on Wednesday?
Well, yeah, Latrell Mitchell's been in fine form.
I get the feeling he's ready to explode this series, Latrell. I think in the last couple of club matches, he's guarding himself.
I'm aware of that, but that's the thing. But as I say, I'm very confident in Queensland. I'm not even being biased. I think we can do the job here at home. And it's a pretty balanced team, and Daly's come through good, which I think that was a very important part of the side. Could have been a whole rejig, and Morgan's sort of gone a bit all right lately, but it hasn't been. So, no, he stood up, plenty of pressure on him last year.
Absolutely.
He stepped up, but I'm glad Walker got a start. I think he fully deserves it. I probably rated him before he started playing NRL. I just couldn't understand why he wasn't playing. He's been going exceptional himself with, got a couple of South combinations there. I think that's all going to help New South Wales. I mean, it showed last night, 6 and 9 are pretty important.
Absolutely.
Eels have been up and down. Wouldn't say it was convincing, but they did win well in the end.
I do think, obviously with my New South Wales bias, mate, I kind of feel like, Damien Cook and Tedesco are our major assets, and Latrell Mitchell on the edge obviously is going to be, a bit of a danger as well. But I'm with you. I think it's going to be a very close game, and I'm very worried about it being in Queensland and the fact people think we're going to win. I'm not a big fan of that. Just on yourself, mate. People know you as Rowdy. I actually don't know the history. How did you get that nickname?
I was actually a country boy, mate, so my nickname's Jack, family name. I was just talking to someone today about it. My family and mum still all call me Jack, but
Yeah, right.
the Rowdy stands out, obviously, because, you're in the limelight with footy, and it was actually Crusher Cloud because I was so quiet, and I just went down there and trained my butt off 30 days straight so I could win the 20-metre challenges and the 3-mile runs and the shuttle runs and all that sort of thing. And Crush said, yeah, don't say much. I think I'll call you Rowdy.
And it stuck.
It's been there for, what is it, nearly 35 years now.
So you can blame
yeah,
Crusher for that one.
Yeah, big Crusher. Yeah, he's the one that knighted me, Rowdy.
Mate, Rowdy, you said you played for a number of clubs, obviously. You did that sort of proverbial journeyman in a weird way. Is there any club in particular that you have a fondness for?
Well, mate, I think my heart's at Manly. It was just unfortunate. My wife was very close to Mum, and we're country people, and she was missing her a lot. I was at Manly 5 years, and then, they bit of debate over that, but we won the 87 grand final, and I think it was more of a bit of a motivation, shake you up. They said, right, if you're not happy, you can leave the club.
Yep.
And I thought, here's an opportunity to go. So I put my hand up, said, I'm out of here. And then I went in to see Doug Dale and said, no, you're one person that's not going. I honestly should never have left the joint, but I think I'd still be there.
Yeah,
and unfortunately,
right.
went to the Broncos under Wayne Bennett, who, compared to Bobby Fulton, I know he's done well since. Obviously, he, to me, I had no idea. I was trying to talk about patterns and plays. Bozo was ahead of his time. Bobby Fulton's
Really?
Excellent, mate, excellent.
So what was the? You said it wasn't the greatest under Wayne Bennett. What was the source of friction there?
I was trying to talk him into 37 and returns and 25 falls and all this, and 3 this 4 and kick, and just just didn't know what I was talking about. Said I'll talk to the senior players, but they hadn't experienced that, anything like Fulton or the New South Wales comp or whatever, ARL comp, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
They weren't at that level. I mean, they're good enough to play at that level, but they haven't played there. And Fulton was, he was pretty full on. And we sort of focused, more on the attacking team, what they were doing, what they could do, rather than, what we could do. And, you learn a lot from videos. And as I said, he was ahead of his time. And I was trying to work that into the Broncos when I first went there, but just weren't interested. And then tried to get out of that straight away. But they wouldn't let me go. And then I tried to get out of the Broncos end of the year, but these days everyone just leaves, but they wouldn't let me go. And unfortunately, then I thought, well, that's 7 years. I'll stay up here for my wife. And we'd just been married, so one had the kids and that, and went to where we go, the Gold Coast. The old Seagulls financially struggled, ended up leaving there. Went to the Crushers, and the Super League started, and they couldn't keep up with that. And I thought, that's the end of the story for me. But then Gus Gill rang and come down the Roosters. I want to coach you. So ended up down there, and then went back to Serena and went on with life, and then Cowboys run. It was good. I scored a couple of tries the first game for them, and then one man of the match the last game. But good things come to an end, and unfortunately, it's just how it unravelled with a couple of those clubs financially. As I say, I think I would have been still at Manly,
So you're a bit of a victim of circumstance, Rowdy, by the sounds of it. That you made that one decision, and it sort of caused a bit of a chain reaction of bouncing around between clubs.
Yeah, it was a shocking decision actually. Yeah.
Well, mate, we all have our decisions we regret. So Manly, in your way, you've got Manly, the Eagles, that sort of closest to your heart.
Well, I did, and then I didn't, and then like Daly's there now, and that's Bobby's on me. He played for Serena Juniors, so I don't really get into it, but I probably, for him, and it's one club that still invites you to their functions and their little corporate boxes and that, you just don't seem to get that. Oh, Seagulls have been great. Seagulls are actually, or Gold Coast Titans, whatever. Yeah, every function they have on, which is good. But
Nice. And
you
so,
wouldn't have thought I'd play for the Broncos if I know the truth.
yeah, really. Yeah, I mean, for such a big club as well.
Or the Cowgirls, mate. Nothing's going there either.
And it's weird because you're, an iconic Queenslander, and when it comes to the state of origin specifically, you're in folklore. You'd imagine these clubs would look after you like you were gold dust.
Yeah, there's quite a few other players we've discussed it. It's disappointing to say the least. But at the end of the day, you played there, you've broken legs and arms and bloody jaws for them, but bled for them. But it's disappointing. But I put my hand up for Manly, and as I say, Gold Coast, every function they've had, they make sure they contact you.
Well, there's there's plenty of Manly and Titans fans listening, mate, so they'll be happy the fact that the clubs are doing the right thing. So you're making someone happy by saying that. Oh, look, Rowdy, I'll leave you.
Well, the Crushers can't contact me anymore.
No, exactly. I'm sure they'd try if they could.
Good management there, but
I bet.
Group of guys it was, yeah.
Mate, Rowdy, I'll leave you with one last question, mate, and this is coming from a pure New South Welshman bias, but is there any scoop that you know if Cameron Smith's going to make a comeback this series? I know all you Queenslanders talk at some level. Is there any rumours or murmurs you can comment about there?
I might next year.
Okay, yeah, mate, bring it on.
I can't see him coming back, mate. No. They're talking about he's very capable of it, and probably could have this year. Well, he wouldn't wouldn't surprise me if he played one man of the match, if I know the truth. But
100%.
Anyway, he's made a decision, and it would have been excellent. But life goes on, and as I said, we've got Benny Hunt in there, and he did actually exceptionally well there somewhere, Australia, whatever. Played hooker, so I hope he can do the same job Wednesday night.
Mate, without any bias, I hope they go well as well. I just hope it's a good match. So, mate, Rowdy, it's been a pleasure having you on the potty, mate. I really appreciate you taking out the time to have a chat with us, and because I know you're busy up there, and thanks for coming on, mate.
All good, mate. Happy days anytime.
A truly fascinating chat there with Rowdy, and thanks again, mate, for briefly fraternising with the enemy and coming on the podcast. You were a stellar Alexander Litvinenko by anyone's measure. Well, that brings us to the end of the show, and we certainly hope you've enjoyed your time with us today. And until next time, just do what Steve Turner would do and become the metaphorical equivalent of a saloon door to Greg Inglis. Just something for GI to push through effortlessly, really. See you next time.